Central is chatting to David Icke again, and thank you very much for your time today, David.
No problem.
Great to see you in Zurich yesterday. Really wanted to find out your opinion about Barack Obama, and I was under the impression perhaps that he won the Nobel Peace Prize because he's going to be the disclosure president and disclose ET sort of presence on Earth or off-world and our contact with them. What do you think about this?
I think Barack Obama will reveal whatever the people controlling Barack Obama tell him to reveal. We look at presidents and we think that they're the people in power and they're making the decisions. They're just the interface between the power system and the public. That's all they are. So Obama's been brought through over many years to be the president at this time. They've chosen him for a reason to be here now, and one of the main parts of that, I think, is that he's a salesman, and they have to sell now major changes in the world. And if you've got someone who's as obviously corrupt, who's obviously a warmonger, like a Cheney or a Bush, they can cause the problems to which you can then offer your solutions, which is what the Bush era did with all the, overseas wars, the extending of the American military, the financial crash in the last months of his presidency. They can create you problems, but they're not really salesmen, certainly not salesmen, who can sell the solutions, which is the changes in society that they want. So, if you want to sell a tyranny to the public, then you don't want someone who's obviously tyrannical. You want someone with a smiling face and who seems a nice man and all this. There's the people that you want to sell your tyranny. And I look upon Obama as like a used car salesman. He is so not in control of what he is doing and saying that virtually every word he speaks in public is on a teleprompter screens. That's why he keeps looking left and right all the time. He's reading it off a screen. Now, it's not coming from the heart. It's not written by him. He's basically a newsreader. He's an actor. When you've got people like Ronald Reagan, a B-movie actor as president, it really sums up the Post. They're actors. They're there to bring into the public arena in changes in legislation or actions like declaring wars what has been decided in the background, and they're just there to make it happen. They're not deciding anything. And so in terms of this disclosure stuff, Obama will do whatever he's told to do. I do feel, though, that for many reasons, not least researchers, not least insiders who are now speaking out a bit more about this, that we are coming to a point where the world is going to have to recognize that there is a massive non-human extraterrestrial presence around this planet, in this planet, and that behind the ruling human bloodlines and behind the human structure is actually a non-human force that's orchestrating all this. When I first started talking and writing about this 15 years ago or more, I went on what was not anything like such a massive, sophisticated internet in those days, but I went on and I put various keywords in about reptilian extraterrestrials and all that stuff. Handful of pages came up. You put those words in today, tens of thousands of pages come up. And we are moving to this point. I've been almost taken aback. And I went to Washington State, to Arizona, to Santa Fe, to Amsterdam, to Sweden, to Zurich, where we are now. And I've just been there's this extraterrestrial thing, but I won't talk about it because, people might think it's crazy. And I've just gone for it. Listen, reptilian entities operating just outside of visible light, the frequency range that we can see, are manipulating this world. I mean, you've seen it. I've gone for it. And what's been the reaction of the people? It's not been what it would have been a few years ago, which is, what? The guy's bloody mad. People are now encompassing this. And I keep meeting more people who have had access to the inside, who are now coming out saying, yeah, they exist. This is what's happening. So we are reaching this point now where all this is going to explode in the public arena. And it may well be that, it will have to be acknowledged officially at some point, but they won't want to do that until it's absolutely necessary, because it's this non-human control system that is behind the control system that is behind the Obamas and the Bushes and the apparent human leaders.
I'm very interested to find out how they think that the public is that stupid that they can pull off giving Barack Obama the Peace Prize legitimately.
Well, I think they've reached the point where they don't care, frankly. I mean, when they can give the Nobel Peace Prize to Henry Kissinger, who's wanted for war crimes in a number of countries, they can give it to Al Gore for lying about global warming, it's lost all credibility. And, I think the Nobel Peace Prize is summed up by the fact that it's named after Alfred Nobel, who made his fortune inventing explosives and selling weapons.
Is that right?
That's right, yeah. That was the irony. And so giving it to warmongers and giving it to people like Obama, whose first decision in office was to agree to bombing Pakistan, I think is very appropriate given the background of where the prize came from.
Okay. The biblical second coming is going to be played out, and it's all very evident in these images of the rising sun. Do you know anything about that? The rising sun's coming up behind various logos, and Barack Obama used it behind his sort of inauguration profile poster, and he says that he believes that this is a symbol that something's coming, that it's possibly a play out of the biblical second coming.
Well, so I guess there's a number of things there. First of all, I've been highlighting in my books for years and my presentations this recurring image of the rising sun. It's nothing new. The Illuminati secret society bloodline network has been using it for a long, long time. I mean, if you look at the headquarters of the 33rd degree of Scottish Rite of Freemasonry in Washington, D.C., just down the road from the White House, it's like an Egyptian, Greek, Roman type pillared building. And behind the pillars is a massive depiction of the rising sun. George Washington, the first president of the United States, and a high Freemason, of course, he had a famous sun chair which had the rising sun. You look over the door of Downing Street and you'll see the rising sun when you look at it in close-up. Look at NBC, where they've made it look like a bird, but it's actually the rising sun. So it's a theme that can be charted back a long time. I know Jordan has been highlighting that, and so the fact that they're using it now is kind of par for the course. I've got great respect for Jordan and the work he's done and the work he does, and the immensely important stuff about symbolism, because that's the language they talk in. But we do differ from what you've told me in terms of what the light at the end of the tunnel is.
Yes.
My view is that we're in for some very, very bumpy years. We're now entering the hurricane, if you like. But my view very, very strongly is that this control system's coming down. It's not coming down tomorrow. It's going to, for a few years, it's going to seem like all is lost, but it's coming down because to understand why it's coming down, we have to understand the nature of this reality. It appears solid, it appears physical, it's just an energetic construct. the prime level, the prime state of this reality is vibrational, right? It's a vibrational construct, and we are decoding vibrational information into electrical information, which the five senses then pass to the brain, and the brain is constructing this apparently solid reality. It's just a holographic illusion. All this stuff is provable. I mean, the Matrix movies went into it, and the illusory nature of this reality, and in its basic theme, the Matrix movies were absolutely spot on. And it's at that level that this is changing, and going to come down. It's difficult to talk about it at the moment, because there are things that I'm going to bring out in this new book which I don't want to talk about yet, because I want it to come out as one unit. But let me put it this way, for now. This is a virtual reality universe. It's like a fantastically complex, or not even complex, but sophisticated, advanced computer game. And these human bodies, they're like computers. They're body computers, that's what I call them. And they allow consciousness, our awareness, to interact and interface with this reality. Just like we go on the internet through a computer, so we go on what I call this cosmic internet through the body computer. And when the body dies, our awareness, the real self, withdraws from the body, and that's what people are experiencing when they have near-death experiences. So when you look at what science says about the mass matter that exists in this universe, they talk about the fact that the vast, overwhelming majority of mass matter in this universe we can't see, because the five senses are only accessing a tiny frequency range we call visible light. And outside of that, we can't see it. It exists, but we can't see it. It's like a cat will react to empty space, or empty space to us, because the cat's got a wider visual frequency range, and therefore it can see things within this universe that we can't see. So imagine you've got the virtual reality universe as a whole, and then something's hacked into it. In the same way, in principle, as the Chinese government firewalls off Chinese computer systems, so the Chinese cannot access enormous tracts of the internet that the rest of us can access.
We've got stuff that's firewalled off from us that we cannot access.
Yeah. It's putting it in the simplest terms. This virtual reality universe in its entirety has been hacked into. And when you see all these ancient accounts about the manipulation of human genetics and interbreeding with non-human entities and all that stuff, that's part of this hack. Because this energy field that we're experiencing now goes on and on and on and on out in frequency terms, but I and we can only access this bit because that's all this body computer will access. It's like this is like a television channel, a holographic television channel, if you like. And because this body computer is tuned to this channel, this visible light frequency, that's all we can access. So if you want to suppress, limit the amount of this universe that someone can perceive, it's a bit like tuning your television to channel 1, because then it will only pick up channel 1. And a lot of this, because 95% of human DNA, scientists call junk DNA because they don't know what it does. Well, a fundamental part of that junk DNA, I mean, what are they saying that the creator of this human body originally said, okay, we'll put 95% of DNA in there and it won't do anything, but that will confuse them. No, it was there to do something. And what's happened with this genetic manipulation is they've firewalled off this body computer's ability to perceive, decode, experience great chunks of this virtual reality universe that humans used to access once. And it's also been done in energetic terms as well, and ways that I'm fast beginning to understand. And where I'm leading with all this is that there are energetic, you might call them mathematical equations, which, when they are activated, will unhack the hack. It will unpick the firewall and the firewalls. And this reality is going to change dramatically when that happens. It's difficult to talk about it because there's so many things to get across before it makes any kind of real sense. This is why it has to be written down, really. But every time I think about this point where this energetic firewall comes down, I see Sleeping Beauty waking up and going, what happened? Where am I? Because this energetic hack firewall has in effect put humanity to sleep. We are accessing such a tiny band of frequencies because we've been put into this vibrational prison cell, if you like, that it's breathtaking. I mean, when you think that the electromagnetic spectrum is something like 0.005% of what exists in this universe, and that visible light is a fraction of the 0.005%, you can see that we are barely decoding anything compared with what there is to decode and experience in this virtual reality universe alone. And when you see it in those terms, it becomes more and more blatantly obvious that there has been some devious manipulation here to put us in this tiny band of frequencies which we perceive as everything, when it's a tiny little television station that we're accessing. And this is what is going to change. People can protest in the streets and do all that, and we should make our presence felt, and there's many things we can do to support this. But what's happening in the end is it's an energetic change. It's an energetic shift that's going to take place because there are forces at work that are in the process of bringing this about. And what you have is humans are kept in a tiny box by suppression of information, suppression of knowledge, and many other means. Then you've got the non-human, the reptilian group that is behind this whole conspiracy. And they're also in a box of awareness, because their state of being is, we wish to control, we wish to enslave, and all the rest of it. Our state of being, mentally and emotionally, affects fundamentally the energy field that we are projecting. And when you are in a state where you want control over, you want to enslave, where you can cause incredible suffering and have no empathy with the consequences for others of your actions, that puts you in a low vibrational state. And energy consciousness is information. The lower your vibrational state, the less information you can access. Because, how can, if you're vibrating to the frequency of channel 1, you're not going to connect with channel 2 because you're on different wavelengths. Never the twain shall meet. So the very fact that these reptilian entities want to enslave, want people to suffer, want to cause mayhem, means that they're in a very low vibrational state. This means they can't access higher levels of awareness. And so what they have to do to control humanity is put humanity in a lower level of awareness than they're in. There's this saying, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. This reptilian group is the one-eyed man. And what they have sought to do, and they've done it brilliantly up to this point, is they want to make humans blind. But there are other forces at work which can be accessed, which these reptilian entities cannot access. Because of their state of being, they cannot access that level of awareness. And if they could access that level of awareness, they would very quickly double the toilet roll order. Because there are things happening that they are not aware of because they can't access that level of consciousness, that are in the process of bringing this down. And it can only happen in a very coordinated way, because if this energy shift happened too fast, it would be catastrophic, because the energetic vibrational movement would be so vast that basically anyone in it would get blown away. So it's being done as fast as possible, but it's being done in a coordinated way. And how it's manifesting, and I'm a barometer of it really, because 20 years ago, when I consciously started this journey, it was like, trying to find anyone interested in this stuff, never mind would even turn their minds to the possibility it was true, was very, very difficult. Now, and I've been to 50 countries in the last 20 years, and I've seen it. Doesn't matter what the culture is, it doesn't matter what the background is, people are just waking up. It is like a mass sleeping beauty going on, God, why didn't I see it before? And what's happening is this vibrational change was starting to affect some people earlier who were more open, but now it's starting to affect and transform the perception of people who literally weeks ago would have said, that's bloody nonsense. Now it's like, it's perfectly obvious. And so this vibrational change is getting more and more powerful, but it can't just go, okay, oh, there you go. It was devastating vibrationally. So it's being done, and it's this that's bringing it down, and will bring it down, because there's going to come a point where it's like what I'm seeing is lock gates, where you've got two sets of water, and you've got the lock gate, and the water has to be brought up, and then the lock can open, and you can take your barge across from one set of water to a higher or lower set of water, because the two levels have been brought through the lock to connect. Imagine if your boat's here and you just open the bloody lock door, and this is what's happening vibrationally. It's having to be done in a way that we're not going to see this enormous bloody devastating leap in vibration, and there's going to come a point, and it's not tomorrow, but it's not 10 years from now either, where the door is going to open. But by that time, because it's a process of getting closer and closer to it, more and more people are going to be awakening and awakening and awakening. But when the final shift is made, when this firewall is unpicked, then we're going to live in a very, very different world, and it's going to be eventually what some people might call utopia or paradise compared with where it is now. Because life is not meant to be a bitch and then you die. It's not meant to be that. We live, and people are starting in greater numbers now to come more and more to terms with this. We live in a fundamentally controlled reality. Almost the relationship of fishes swimming in the bowl, it's far more controlled than ever we understand up to this point. And in this new book, I'm going to explain the extent to which the control takes place, how it takes place, and how it's done. And then people will have the opportunity to see that even though they thought we lived in a controlled society, they didn't realize just how controlled it is. And it's very important that we understand this, because once you grasp the scale of the control, how it's done, and the means through which it happens, then suddenly we have the power to change it, and we do. This information will give us the power to change it, it's a very, very exciting time, because we're living through extraordinary events that are taking place around us without us even realizing it. But that extraordinary stuff is coming more and more and more into our awareness, and we're going to be perceiving and seeing and directly, consciously experiencing extraordinary things, extraordinary changes, and I have to say enormous challenges too, because this control system is a bit like a cornered rat. It's going to thrash out, and it's going to do everything it can to hold on to its power. Don't waste your time, guys. Don't waste your time. Just a matter of a few years, that's all it is. There has been massive manipulation of human genetics to stop us perceiving what we used to perceive. For instance, I mean, this is an interesting point. These reptilian entities, if you look at some of the real ancient accounts, they talk about these reptilian entities living among them, and then suddenly they weren't living among them. So what do they do? Where do they go? What happened? Well, if you at one point had a much wider frequency range of visible experience, you could see far more. Then what if these entities were within that range? What would they do? They'd live among you. What if you then manipulated human genetics so that you could only see a much narrower band of frequency and experienced awareness? Those entities are still where they've always been, but you can't see them anymore. So they disappear.
It's interesting. Credo Mutwa actually said on one of the interviews you did with him that vaccinations caused the children not to be able to see UFOs, other spirits, and other entities. Do you think that this is what the whole program was when they started making vaccinations, and does it affect us in that way? Do you know anything?
Well, I think that the vaccinations have multiple reasons for being, and the reasons they want to get that shite inside us. But one of the really common themes that I picked up over many, many years in ancient and modern accounts is the desperation of these reptilian entities not to be exposed, not to be identified, so that they can go on manipulating without us realizing they even exist. And another theme in the ancient world, and Credo talks about this among other accounts, is that the people were told never to depict them, the gods, as they were perceived, as they really looked. So you have a great range of symbolic representations of them that, unless you know the codes, you wouldn't realize that's what they're symbolic of. For instance, Credo Mutwa has this ancient necklace of the mysteries, and it's got a human woman on it, and then it's got a male that is clearly not human, but is not reptilian. And Crater was saying this represents the reptilians, the Chitauri, the children of the serpent, as they call them in Zulu. And I asked the obvious question there. Well, why is he depicted like that as not reptilian, but clearly not human? It's because of the same thing. The people were warned, you must never depict us as we really are. So there is a desperation not to be exposed, and that tells us something. If something's all powerful, it wouldn't care. It wouldn't care about being exposed. But it's a real common theme. The thing is, the power is with humans, but only when humanity understands that. This is why we've got this constant life to death, cradle to grave, not life to death, there is no death, cradle to grave process of implanting the belief that we're little me, we're Joe Public, what can I do? I have no power. It's a constant mantra through your life, and it's kind of underpinned in endless different ways, and it's to keep us in the myth that we have no power, when we're all powerful once you realize this true nature of what humanity is and what we really are. And so the ability to perceive, the ability to access beyond visible light, where you can access information, awareness and insight and inspiration that can give you a much greater fix on this world. People that can get out there psychically in various means and see beyond visible light, or perceive in many ways beyond visible light, these are all enormous threats to the control system, because you're starting to enter areas of perception and awareness where you can start to understand what's actually going on. Because it's not something that is easy to find within visible light. It's hidden very, very well. But once you get out beyond that and expand your consciousness, you access those levels where you can get a grasp on what's actually happening. So anything that can suppress that ability to expand your consciousness and access that understanding is supporting the control system. So in terms of this body computer, it's also a receiver transmitter of information. That's why it's crystalline. I mean, we've got trillions and trillions and trillions of cells, and the membrane of every cell is liquid crystal. I've looked down a microscope at my own blood, which was increasingly, as I watched, more and more and more magnified, and eventually my blood became quartz crystal, right? And so this is a crystalline receiver transmitter. Now, if that receiver transmitter is working as efficiently as it can, in terms of its reception, for instance, then you can access frequencies, you can access knowledge and information of great magnitude to give you a much greater fix on the world and yourself and reality than you normally would just with invisible light. So anything that destabilizes that receiver transmitter system supports the control mechanism, because you're not accessing information out there to give you a fix on what's actually happening here. They want to isolate us in the five senses. Because what do we do? When you're in the five senses, what happens? You're looking at five sense reality to get a fix on five sense reality. And how do you get a fix on it? Information. Where does the information come from? Education system, media. Who controls that? The control system. So the idea is to isolate us in the five senses. So we're perceiving everything and experiencing everything only through the five senses. And that's putting us in the vibrational prison. So to stop us getting out there, they throw many things at us. One level of the receiver transmitter, the body computer, is electrochemical, right? It's an electrochemical organism. So look at the stuff they put in food in terms of chemicals. That's destabilizing the receiver transmitter on that level. It's destabilizing the body computer. Then you look at all the electromagnetic microwave pollution that we're living in now. Even some mainstream newspapers have been writing articles about it. I've been reading over the last couple of years. They call it electromagnetic soup that we live in. Now, what's that doing in terms of making it difficult to get out there? And now we come to the key, the microchip. The microchip. Microchip is about electronic tagging, yes. But its main reason, I was given chapter and verse about this in 1997 by a CIA scientist who's proved to be very, very accurate with the passage of the years. He was the one that told me that in 1997 they had microchips that were so small they could be injected through a hypodermic needle in vaccination programs, and that was the plan. So that's 1997 he told me that. But he was saying that the microchips are not just about electronic tagging. They're about external manipulation of the body physically, mentally, and emotionally. And he might have added vibrationally. So the idea is to get us microchipped to suppress this awakening and destabilize our ability to tune into these changes and access the awareness, the insight, the inspiration that these energies contain. So that we stay in the box. Because, when people talk about people being in the box, it is a vibrational box, ultimately, that we're in. Because energy is consciousness, and consciousness contains information. Everything is information. All existence is about encoded information and decoded information. And so, the more you expand your consciousness, the greater level of information you access. It's like the library gets bigger and bigger and more sophisticated and knowledgeable. And you then can bring that down into this reality to get a completely different fix on what we're actually experiencing compared with that, the five senses. And at the moment, they are throwing everything at us to suppress this more than ever before, because they know and have been aware of for a long time that this point of vibrational change was coming. So a few centuries ago, they didn't have to go crazy suppressing people's ability, because people were locked in the box anyway, most people. But now, as this awakening is happening, this vibrational change is happening, and people are beginning to open their minds to it, now they have to throw everything at us because they're trying to keep the lid on something that's very, very blatantly beginning to open. And this is why it's at this time, not 20 years ago, not 50 years ago, not 100 years ago, but now that this whole control system is throwing everything at us, and the microchips are the jewel in their crown. For this suppression of consciousness, this suppression of us going through this immense transformation. And I have no doubt myself that this blatant and actually rather pathetic attempt to vaccinate everyone on the planet with this swine flu vaccine, I have no doubt at all that nanotechnology microchips are part of that. These people are in a blind panic at this time, and it seems, arrogant, strutting along, control system, we're in control, right? They're panicking like crazy because the house of cards is held together by human ignorance. It's going to be brought down by human awareness and awakening to the true magnificence of who we really are. And they are shiting themselves as this becomes more obviously manifesting in the world.
Yeah. When you visited a channel 20 years ago, you mentioned that there were the keepers of the knowledge from the Atlantean period. You spoke about it when you were on stage yesterday, you read about it. We recently found a book called The Lost Children of Atlantis, The Lessons of the Law of One. Just wanted to find out if you knew anything more about this and if you had come across any of the lost teachings of Atlantis.
Well, I've come across there's a series, isn't it, The Law of One? It's a series, yeah. I've read one or two here and there. I think that the Atlantean period is very, very, very significant in this story. Funnily enough, some people think Atlantis was another planet. You know, I'd need more evidence to go with that, but I'm open to anything. But quite demonstrably, because it's in the biological and geological record, there were fantastic Earth upheavals at some point. And this is when it is said that what we call Atlantis and Lemuria, Mu, came down. And the way I see it, as I picked it up over the years, is that if you like the golden age of what we call Atlantis was a world that's nothing like the one we're experiencing now. It was a completely different energetic environment that we lived in. People were, as a matter of course, connected on multi levels. They were aware of who they were and that what this reality they were experiencing was. I feel if you go what we call back far enough, you'd find a period where we didn't even eat food. Because what is food? It is a energy. That's what it is. So we were in a completely different, when I say we weren't necessarily there, I'm talking about what we call the human story. We were in a very different physical form, much less dense than it is now. And we were able to absorb energy for sustenance, literally from the energy fields around us, because the energy fields around us were much more powerful energetically than they are now. And if you are getting your sustenance from the energy fields that you're living in, you don't need to eat food. If you don't need to eat food, then one thing you don't have to do is kill animals. If animals are also in an energetic state where they're absorbing energy from the atmosphere, they don't have to kill each other. The law of the wild, therefore, does not exist. It's a completely different experience, a completely different world. When what I call the schism happened, which was brought about by these reptilian entities, I know how they did it now, and I'll talk about it in my new book at some length. The whole energy environment changed. There were energies that the Golden Age Atlanteans were able to access and exploit that were not available anymore. The energy environment was such that it was far, far more difficult to absorb the energy you needed for sustenance from the atmosphere, because we're in a completely different energetic state. I mean, there is no energy in this reality now in comparison to the energy that was available then, before this schism I talk about. And therefore, there's now an energy gap between the energy you need for sustenance and the energy that you're absorbing. And that gap was made up by another form of energy, which we call food. Now what people call the animal kingdom, the animal world, that had to make up an energy gap also. So they did it and do it to this day by killing each other. I mean, let's just get our heads around this. Does anyone really think that, people have questioned this, if there's a loving God, why do you have animals kill each other? Well, it's a bloody good question. Are we saying that that which created this reality actually set out originally to turn every copse, every farmer's field into a place of slaughter, where insects are killing insects and animals are killing animals, and in the wilder areas the animals are being torn apart? Is that really what? Well, yeah. Let's get them tearing each other apart and eating each other. It'd be great. This is something that is a manifestation. The very law of the wild itself, as they call it, is a manifestation of the obvious fact that we are living in a fundamentally imbalanced environment, an imbalanced reality. Something's happened to shift it into this ludicrous state that we live in, where not only, we need to think about it, how many animals, insects, people kill each other on this planet every day? It must be off the scale in terms of numbers. Every day. It's a planet of slaughter on multiple levels. Anyone think that was created on purpose originally? No. We've gone through a massive energetic schism, as I call it, which has imbalanced everything, has fractured the human personality, has created schisms in the human personality. So we're not the whole harmonious beings that we were before the schism. We're living in a world that is not like it was meant to be, and it's not like it's going to be, because this schism is in the process of being healed, and as it's healed, this energetic change that we talked about earlier, then this world is gonna change, and that's what's going to bring the control system down. Control system cannot survive the energetic environment and the human awareness that is in the process of manifesting. It can't, and it won't.
David, it's wonderful that you're so absolutely optimistic about this, and it's very inspiring, because I think a lot of people are awakening to the awful reality that we have been living in, and a lot of people are quite desperate and despairing, and we are at an interesting point in the crossroads of human destiny, and it's important to get the message out there to people not to despair and to keep their vibrations high. What would you say to them?
Well, what I would say to them is this. Let's look at the bottom line. What's the worst can happen to any of us? We die. Okay, so what does that mean? Our infinite consciousness leaves this body computer, which acts as a lens that locks us into this reality. We leave the body computer, and suddenly we are infinite consciousness in awareness of itself, capable of extraordinary things, as near-death experiences have described many times. That's the worst that can happen. Cool, I'm shaking, look at me. We are here in this reality now because we chose to be. As I said in the talk yesterday, there's no one on another level with a machine gun saying to consciousness, get in that body or I shoot. We're here because we chose. The thing we need to understand is the level that's now experiencing this is not the level that chose it. So we can get confused and say, I never agreed to this. Well, the level of awareness that just said that didn't make the choice. You're experiencing the choice. And as you expand your consciousness and you start to access those levels of yourself where the choices were made to be here at this time, then you start to understand, because you've accessed that level, you then start to understand why you made the choice to be here. And I would say that collectively we made the choice, probably for many, many reasons, but a major reason is we came to play a part in setting this reality free from the control system that has been manipulating this reality for quite a while, and we came to play a part in bringing that down, and setting the place free and rebalancing everything and all the rest of it. And I feel that I feel very strongly, actually, that what we would call the older generations, people like me, 57, people in their 50s, 60s, that kind of time, they came to be the snowplow, to help to break the system down through information. These younger people today, the children of today, the young people of today, these children that they call indigo children and all the rest of it, although I think there's lots of people like that around now, they've come in to take this on when the system comes down. I tell you now, the kids of today and the young people of today are not going to live their lives in a fascist tyranny. They're not going to do it. I'm quite emotional about this, but they're not going to live in a fascist tyranny for most of their life. It might seem in the next few years that that's where it's heading, and it will be heading that way in the next few years. But my kids and my grandkids and everyone else's are not going to live their lives in the tyranny that we're heading to now. It's not going to happen.
That's very inspiring to hear. I think we're going to finish off now, and I just wanted to finish on infinite love is the only reality and everything else is an illusion.
Yeah, when I took a psychoactive potion for the only time in my life, 2003, I had a fantastic experience. Not everyone does mind. People make their own choice. I'm not recommending it or not recommending it. But this female voice talked to me as loud as mine is now for about 5 hours about the nature of reality. And it was hilarious. I mean, my legs were in the air a couple of times. It was just painful. It was so funny because it was just laying out what a bloody illusion we live in and how funny it is that we take it seriously. But the first thing that virtually that this voice said, first of all, it said, we're going to take you to where you come from so you can understand where you are. And that's how it started. And the next line said, all you really need to know is infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion. There's another great line in there which said, if it vibrates, it's illusion. And with the passage of the years since then, I've understood just how profound that is. Because one of the places I went to in this altered state of consciousness was still and silent. And people think that still and silent means nothing. It's silent, so there's nothing. It's still, so there's nothing happening. But in that stillness, which is at the very core of our being, we operate on all these multiple levels, but the core of our being is stillness and silence. Because within the silence, everything exists. We think that things are happening because we're talking, and therefore, yes, something's happening, I can hear a noise. But that's just one possibility pulled out of the silent all possibility. And when I stop talking, it goes back into the silent all possibility. It's the silence and the stillness where everything is. And when I experienced that, it was infinite love on a level that we can't even understand what love is. We think, we've got various perceptions of love. I mean, it's almost not, the word's almost so devalued. So we call it infinite love and all this stuff. Within this hacked, imbalanced, manipulated reality, we have not developed the language to describe, not the words have great limitations anyway, but the language to describe some of these concepts because we haven't experienced them. But when you experience them, it's very difficult to find words to describe them. But it is infinite love, that's it. And what happens is possibilities, different possibilities, manifest out of the all possibility. And we call them worlds, we call them dimensions, we call them realities. And all these realities vibrate because one of the prime creating forces of them is sound. And so they vibrate to different frequencies. But they're manifestations, they are the imagination made manifest of all possibility. They are creations. The core is stillness and silence. That is the infinite love that I talk about. And so that explains two things. First of all, infinite love is the only truth. The existence of one infinite awareness is the only truth. Everything else is illusion, these illusory realities that we decode into physical when they're not. And it also explains the other line, if it vibrates, it's illusion. And whatever happens in the world of vibration, whether we like it or whether we don't like it, whether we love doing it or we'd rather it not be happening, it's just an illusory experience. It's just a dream. And once you realize the dreamer is the dream, you realize that you can manifest your own reality by dreaming another dream. And when everything else is over, no matter what's happened in the world of illusory, vibrating dream, you're still what you always were and what you always will be, silent, still, all that is, all possibility. And we think we're Ethel Jones and Charlie Smith. Are you bloody kidding?
David, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And I hope I get to speak to you again soon.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Lovely, thank you.